School board meeting of November 6th, 2024. If everyone could join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're on to minutes for October 2nd. Would anyone like to make a motion? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the October 2nd minutes as written.
No,
Do you have
I
the,
don't have the second, I have the 16th.
oh. Kristen. Do you have more copies of the?
I did read.
Why did Trish let me do this?
I read them.
Okay, do you have a second to the motion? You second the second. The second minute. Ellen. Any discussion about the October 2nd minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving as written? Aye. You abstaining? 401. Okay, October 16th.
Move presented.
Second. Okay, any discussion? It was a light meeting, so.
Second page, three spaces. Your home is basically, that's a stated.
Yes. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of approving with that typo fix? Aye.
Wait a minute, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can approve them if you want, but, same,
Yep.
302. All right. We are on to public comments.
Greg Whitmore, North Road. So I got contacted by a parent who was trying to figure out where to send their kid to high school. And they were looking at the transportation issues associated with getting their kid there. And, we obviously have busing for Concord. And they said, I really want to send my kid to Co-Brown, but the bus is a sticking point for me. Without transportation, what am I supposed to do? And I'm looking at the numbers from last year as far as how many students went, and I'm sure we're going to see at least as many this year. And in another year, we're going to reach that 50-50 point. So what I think would be the logical approach is if we have two buses available, we send one bus to Concord, we send one bus to Co-Brown. But I think parents, if that seems like the way to go, then parents need to know that, because people are trying to make 4-year plans at this point. Am I going to send my kid to Co-Brown, and it'll be tough for the first year because I can't get them there, but I know that there's hope on the horizon, because as the numbers go up, a bus will go there, because it would make sense. It would be fair. I mean, if we had half the students going one, half going the other, why wouldn't we do that, right? So I think the busing is a deterrent at this point. And I don't think something like that is, seen as fair whatsoever to these people who are looking to make this decision. So I'd love to see the school board discuss this. And, I certainly see those Co-Brown numbers jumping pretty dramatically. I mean, it seems we already have a trend going, right? So please, consider that as you move forward, right? There was just one other thing, and I know I brought this up every year, and it seems kind of silly, but schools throughout the state were thrilled to have their kids dressed up for Halloween. Why can't we do that? It's such a simple thing, and it would mean so much to them. I bring it up for the month of October. I would have brought it. I thought there was a meeting a couple days before, Halloween. I was going to do it again, but it's such a shame not to do it. It's a simple thing, and it's very meaningful. Good memories for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Other public comments? Okay. Move on. Agenda review. We do need to add an item D. We're adding a discussion about the solar project. And do we have any consent agenda items?
Nope.
Okay. Do you think we need non-public?
I do not believe so.
Okay. Review of correspondence. We received several emails. One was, one was not to the whole board, but I thought the whole board should be aware, or maybe I included the full board in the response, I can't remember. So there were several emails with Stacy Marchioni about agendas and packets, which we've added to the agenda for tonight. And then there is another email about basketball time. I know Mr. Green did a response to that. I don't know if there's still a concern, but is there anything that anyone wants to discuss about those two our correspondence topics? They will be attached to the minutes when they are published.
Correspondence between Stacy Marchioni and the board about the agendas and packets
Yes.
is, yeah, I think it's, if people can see what's going on ahead of time, they can be able to respond and be part of.
Yeah.
And transparency would be good, and not on a real short notice if it's possible.
Yeah, so we added that as an agenda C tonight, so we can have a more robust discussion about it at that point, but yes. Okay, no consent agenda, so we'll move on to immediate business. Item A is budget presentation from Amber Wheeler and Jessica Bickford.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
Of course. So you have two packets. You have one that's your actual budget packet, and then I just have some notes. Some of the notes that I have on the sheet are in regards to the whole subsection of like the regular programs, special programs, and so forth, not necessarily just the amounts I added, just because I wanted to give you subtotals to those groupings. So I won't necessarily go over anything that Kristen and Brian did unless you'd like me to, and just kind of touch on the things that I've added. Does that work?
I'll just add that some notes have been cleaned up a little bit and updated, and we also updated the technology subscriptions appendix so that you can see exactly which technologies, which software is in which subscription line. So I don't know if you want me to make mention when Amber's going through where we updated notes, or if you just want to go through it.
Well, when I went through, and I also, for the areas that are applied to an appendix, I took the notes out of the budget and put see Appendix A, see Appendix B. So you'll know if you get to that line that we would need to flip to the appendix to see the detail.
Great.
So one of the things I did differently this year, last year we started with putting the total number of FTEs on top of the budget rosters. I think Zach had asked for that a couple years ago. I continued that practice, but one of the other things I did is within the actual budget lines underneath the positions, I added what those FTEs are as well.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of times in the middle of the meetings, well, especially public comments or deliberative, they ask and then we're fumbling to get the number. It's nice to have it right there. So I added that in there. Is there anyone that hasn't, is this the first, everybody's seen this type of budget presentation before? This format?
We did a budget overview over the summer, so I think
Okay.
everyone should be somewhat familiar.
Okay.
We had a lean group at our last meeting where we went over Kristen's budget, but
Okay, perfect. And this year I added line numbers, which is the third column, to try to help us out because this can get pretty complicated. So the items that I entered in the budget are going to be focused around salaries, benefits, utilities, school board expenses, Special ed expenses have been added.
High school.
What was that? I'm
High
sorry?
school.
Yep, high school, transportation. So those are the things I'll go over today. So in the first section, in the memo that I gave you, I'm gonna categorize it as 1,100, which is regular programs. In that section, we've added in, there are 42.75 FTEs. There aren't any additional teachers being requested. So the increase you're seeing there is just strictly derived by the CBA or any personnel changes.
What was the number? I'm sorry.
Well, it's right in your packet,
Okay.
42.75.
All right, okay.
We are requesting a few extra dollars for substitutes, which is on line 3.
That's not changing the rate, that's.
It's not changing the rate, it's just the amount that we've had isn't necessarily always sufficient for coverage. On line 4, the paraprofessional salaries, we are requesting a slightly increased number of FTE, and mostly it's because of a change in hours. So there is a 0.1781. That's also in that note's in there for you. That additional amount of FTE does not get carried forward to the default. That's why you'll see the amount for the proposed and the default are slightly different, because it would not carry forward because it's not currently what we have. We've added in the Title I tutor. That's at a 0.77 FTE. There's no change there other than, I believe it was a personnel change. On line 8 is the contracted services. That's your ELL services. That has gone down, and that is based on student need, the services that are needed for that specific population. On page 4, the next page, on line 12, that's your high school tuition. So right now we are estimating this area because we do not have the Co-Brown tuition rate yet. We're still waiting to get that in. We are estimating about 70 students. Concord High School, we're estimating 133 students. And then currently we're estimating 4 students going to Pembroke Academy.
And these
So-
are these based on the numbers that we've received back from the surveys so far?
So far, yep. So I believe it's November 15th or so those numbers will change, plus the rates will change slightly. The Concord rate should stay the same. I believe the Pembroke rate will stay the same. I just want to give it one more look before I finalize that.
I can give you the data if you want them, just here it is, as of today. We have,
For the
for the
subjects?
8th grade choices,
Yeah.
So as of today, we have 27 Co-Brown, 12 Concord, and 1 PM. So
So
we're still
that's
missing
missing
like 21.
It's a 20, yeah,
21.
it's a class of 60, so.
We have, like in our packet, there was the correspondence with Co-Brown and it had a tuition rate. Is that just not final?
She just wanted to give me the trends and the estimated percent increase. Is that what you're talking about? The
Yeah.
chart, the 2
Yeah.
graphs over, and they had an idea from their board of trustees meetings that they were having, but they haven't finalized it.
Okay, we have an idea of when they'll finalize?
She's told me she thought it was gonna be last week. That's her, so.
Did we have a date in our contract?
Remember that. I wondered.
I think we.
I think we
But I
did,
forgot
but
what
it
it
was
was.
later than we
It was,
needed.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like
Yeah,
December
December.
1st or something
Yeah,
like that.
We had
I
talked
think
to
we
them
went
about
back and
that.
forth
We
about
did.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember what the date
I
was.
want to say, because I think I went back and looked at the last one and I was like, why haven't we received this yet? And then I think I saw December 1st and I was like, oh, that is really late.
I think they had initially proposed like
Yeah.
December 15th and we were like,
Yeah.
no, our budget's already with NBC at that point, we can't change it.
I
Yeah,
know they had a board of directors meeting, and I thought it was last week, but I can reach back out to Karen, but I know she's keeping me updated, as soon as they have information, so.
So we base this on like a historical increase for their rate?
this rate
Or
is
this just
currently
the
what
full
it
rate?
is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the memo that just came in, I had already had this done
Got it.
before that memo came in.
No, that's fine.
So I left it exactly as is, because we haven't been with them long enough to know what kind of percentage of increase they would have.
Yeah, so if you look at the 10-year chart that I put in the drive, it's like 3-4% usually.
Yeah, I had
That
done,
will go up.
I had done my own analysis at one point, and there was like some years that had 2%, some that had 6%,
Yeah.
some that had, it was sort of all over the place, but I think it averaged out to 3 something.
They have
Yeah.
their extending school meeting next week.
Mhm.
I'm going to
Okay,
talk about that.
so as soon as we get that, we'll update that. So that's 207 students we're estimating. Currently, we have 193 budgeted for this year.
So we're at the extra, you anticipate an extra 15 students, or that's just?
Yeah, because the 12th graders are falling off and the class that's coming in is a bigger,
And so we only
60
had, what,
students.
45 last
Mhm.
year or something?
Mm-hmm, it was a small group last year.
let's see here. So the rest of the section is the items that you already went over with Kristen and Brian. Is there any questions about the items I covered in the regular programs? Or anything you saw from the last meeting that you wanted to talk about? All right, yeah.
This might be indicated somewhere on the roster, but do we have a list of which staff are included in the CBAs versus not in the collective bargaining agreements?
In the roster, it's broken out by certified roster,
Yeah.
so that will be all the teachers covered by the teachers handbook. And then the non-certifieds are a little bit different. The paraprofessionals are all covered by the CBA, but then everyone else on those rosters are not covered.
So I can't remember if like guidance counselors.
They
Yep.
are,
Okay.
all are all certified.
All
They're
certified.
Okay, all certified staff are part of the CBA.
Yeah, it's just the non-certified where they're not all included in.
Yeah, if it's a professional staff member and they're on the non-certified roster, it's because they're not covered under the collective
I
bargaining.
see.
So like the tech support staff and.
And that would include contracted people like a school psychologist and or a speech
They're not
person.
on
They're not on there either.
Right, they're not part of the CBA.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Are there, this might be a tough question, but is there a CBA for SAU staff?
It's not an official CBA, it's just an agreement that the board does with
Right.
the employees because they're not unionized.
It's,
Small
yeah,
group.
similar, but not exactly. All right, the next section is special ed, and those are going to be on pages 6 through 8, lines 34 to 55. This area is going up 375,000. So on line 34, that's your teacher salary. Teacher salaries, 10.8 FTEs. There's no additional teachers being asked for there. That's just CBA driven and personnel changes. Let's see here. So the special ed secretary, that's just, that must have been, I don't know, that's a slight difference in that one, so I'll have to double check that. The paraprofessionals right below that, we are looking to add an additional 0.95 additional FTE to that.
Are we currently at full staff for our paraprofessionals?
Now that will carry to the default because it's special ed related and it's required by law that we have those services. So that position has to carry forward.
I'm not sure I understand your account note under paraprofessional. This is 22.95 FTEs.
Yep.
But then you have for the year 24, 25.
Yep.
22.
Yep, so
going
currently
down.
we have 22
Oh, okay. But we
and
want
next year we're 22.95.
next year.
So this budget includes 22.95, but this current year that we're in is 22. The reason why I had that note is because every year that question always gets asked too, how many paraprofessionals do you currently have? So we typically have added that note in, but maybe I can rewrite the way it's worded so it's a little clearer.
I don't know, this looks confusing to me.
Yeah,
You can just say current.
yeah, if it's confusing to you, it's confusing to someone else.
So we are currently budgeting for 22. Do we know how many?
We currently have 22.
We have,
We're budgeting for 22.95 for next year.
Well, you're asking, do we currently have, we have the money for 22.
Correct.
Oh, you're
actually-
Yeah.
we have 22 bodies.
We are not.
How many,
Short And we do have 6 in our regular budget, 6 paraprofessionals. Library aide is considered paraprofessional, preschool aide, and then we have our 4 classroom aides, 3 of which are 3 in first grade and 1 in kindergarten.
Those are back in the 1100s.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the regular ed, yeah. to
Those are
ans-
full class support, not based on students with IEPs.
Correct.
So it goes to gen ed.
Are there vacancies there or just in the special ed areas?
Currently, we have the regular,
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
we have one filled with a part-time person, but it isn't.
Got it. So we're missing 10.
Mhm.
13-ish.
A little more than half.
All right, and then the rest of the special ed, I'm gonna hand out some pieces to go with it. These are, 2 of the sheets are ones that I handed out last year. I've just updated with these numbers for this next year's budget. And then the other one is a breakdown, because you've asked me for this before, a breakdown of what the pre-K to 8 cost is, what the high school cost is, what Co-Brown costs, Concord cost, and potential PA costs. So you're gonna have 3 sheets coming around. And I'll talk about those lines as I pass those out. All right, so the first one, your contracted services line, is the driver for what's increasing the special ed cost this year, or for next school year and for this year. Most of that is due to services that are needed at Co-Brown. Because we're having more and more students go to Co-Brown that have special needs, we're having to provide services like speech, OT, things like that. You know, we don't have our own personnel with enough vacancy in their schedule to go over and provide those services. So we're having to contract with companies like Boothby or Great Consulting, those kinds of companies, to go provide services over at Co-Brown for those kiddos. So that's a kind of a new expense for this year and for moving forward.
And they don't have like in-house staff doing that.
So last year we had an increase that was like 350,000. That was because we had new students, whatever, had to go outside services, right?
That was a couple of things. So in your contracted services, that was because we combined a couple of lines to consolidate. So there was movement from diagnostics into contracted services, so that went up, and placements, yes.
Placements, okay. And then this year, you're saying the majority of this 395,000 is for services needed at Co-Brown?
And a couple other things. So I started with Co-Brown.
Oh, okay,
So
I'm
first one is, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
There's always more than one.
All right,
Can we
yeah.
pause
So,
there though?
yep.
Okay, so we don't yet know which students are going to Co-Brown.
We have an idea, we just don't have a lot of them.
So we still have
Or
21
all of
students who haven't sort of committed. So
Correct.
this number could change.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is a starting point, and likely when we come back again, those will be slightly different.
Okay.
They're not gonna be drastic, hopefully. Always knock on wood, right? But they're, I think,
But sort
a
of,
good chunk of our kids, we have an idea of where they're going.
and regardless, they would be getting services at Concord
Correct.
or Pembroke or at Co-Brown.
Correct.
It
It's
would
just a
just
matter
depend
of
on
how,
Price.
do we already have those personnel? If they go to Pembroke, we already have personnel and it won't be that large of an extra cost. If they go to Concord, Concord has the staff, it won't be quite an extra cost as it is to go to Co-Brown. Because Co-Brown, we're having to contract out with an outside provider. So, and then other increases in that contracted services line are one-to-one nursing services. We do have several students, pre-K through 12 plus, because we service kids to 22. Remember that changed last year. So we do have several students who do require one-to-one nursing due to the type of medical needs that they have. We have had discussions around what that would take to hire our own personnel to meet those medical needs, and if we're even legally allowed to do that based on the type of medical care that they need. So Lisa, Kristen, Patty, and I have had these conversations, and those are in the works, but for right now, we have to budget for what is currently in IEPs, so that's what you're seeing there. Hopefully, we can have some cost savings in the future, but right now, that's what it is.
I just clarify, you mentioned the change in law last year.
Yep.
which required us to cover the costs of educating students up to 22,
That's
like
correct.
you said. But this last year, wasn't that covered by the state
For 1 year.
for
For 1 year.
So now that funding from the state has been turned off, so now we're picking up the difference that they required that we do.
Yes,
Correct.
and they only covered it for a year because they were missing our budget window. So
Yeah.
we would have already made our budget when they put in these changes. So now they're like, now you can budget for it, have a great time.
Who
Correct.
covered the cost for those students up until last year?
So up until last year, we only were servicing students up to 21. So when on their 21st birthday, that was when they transitioned to adult services or to careers or post-secondary education. Now it's 22, so now we're having to make sure that we have students who are in transitioning services. So you'll hear me talk about transition, and that's that school to career transition is what I'm talking about. And so we have to make sure that we're servicing now those transition students up until 22. And the state only paid for placements. So just a clarification on that. The state was only paying for placements for students up to 22, not services. So we were still financially responsible for services for students up to 22, even though we couldn't have budgeted for it. They provided services or financial support for the students who were in placements for 22. So, but now we have the burden of all of those expenditures. So, yep. We also, due to some changes in staffing and financial needs of the SAU as a whole, we ended up cutting the BCBA position at the end of last school year. So we reduced that position in the SAU. So Deerfield still needed that service for some of the students. And so we had to bring on a part-time BCBA here at Deerfield, who also services students at Co-Brown if we need that. So it increased for that, and it's very part-time. I think it's 1 day a week. So I mean, it's as minimal days as we could do it, but it's still an increased cost that is added into that budget.
Can
And
you tell us what BCBA is?
Oh, yeah, so board certified behavior analyst. So basically a person who is a certified behavior specialist who really typically focuses on students who are on the autism spectrum, but may help with other students with significant behavior needs. And you'll see on one of the sheets that I handed out to you, it will give you a percent of how much of the budget is that behavior specialist cost. So the contracted services 323 line, it's the one with all the percentages and hourly rates at the top. 2% of your contracted services budget is for that behavioral support.
Did you break out the other ones, do the nursing services and?
Yep, so, well, I didn't do the percentages. You'd have a 2-page long list of percentages if I did that, but I broke it out by like speech, language therapy services, gave you percent of how much the contracted services budget is for speech, how much it is for PT, for para support, for, yeah. And when I put para support in contracted services, that's para support that kids are getting in like charter schools and things like that, because we're still financially responsible if students live in Deerfield and go to a charter school. So even though they may be attending a school down in Portsmouth, Manchester, wherever, we are still financially responsible for that child, even though they don't go to Deerfield Community School.
Are we their transportation too?
If they require transportation and they have an IEP, yes, we are responsible financially for that. Any other questions on contracted services? You'll see on the breakdown of pre-K to 8 and then high school expenditures for contracted services, I did break out how much the contracted services are anticipated to be for Co-Brown, Concord High School, and then out of district / charter. Some of our students who are in out of district placements, we still have to pay extra for some services that maybe that placement doesn't provide typically, and we have to contract out with an agency. So we may still have some extra expenditures from a student attending an out of district placement. That's why it says out of district there, even though it's not in the special placement line. All right. The special placements lines are holding pretty steady. There was a slight increase in your summer program tuition, and that was just based on changing in programming and student need for ESY for our students in out-of-district placements. Your special placement tuition line is going down a little bit. Again, that's the line that we budget for Co-Brown and Concord High and Pembroke for special education costs, for like tuition for them. That's in your special placements line. So that may change slightly the next time we meet when we get final numbers for tuition and costs anticipated for next year for special education.
Can you remind me, sorry,
No, absolutely.
can you remind me how special education tuition works at Co-Brown? I remember going over this
Yeah,
last
because
summer.
Co-Brown and
but I-
Concord do it differently.
Yeah,
Co-Brown is a flat rate.
right.
And then the contracted services on top of it. So if we have to hire in like speech, OT, things like that. But
So
their specialized
someone-
instruction, like the teachers, that's a flat rate.
A student with an IEP gets an additional flat rate tuition.
Correct.
And then also we pay for services.
Some services.
They're contracted out, not part of the school.
So if we have to hire a para, we pay for that. If we have to hire a speech pathologist, we pay for that. BCBA, like we talked about earlier, we pay for that. But if it's their in-house folks, like special education teachers, that's included in that tuition. Case
Okay.
management included in that tuition.
Okay.
And then
Okay,
Concord does it
And I was
differently.
gonna
They
say,
do it
how
based
does
on
And Concord.
programming and per student need, based on the IEPs.
Okay. I remember hearing something about Co-Brown having, I don't want to say this incorrectly, but they had like classes. I remember like some figure for like specialized classes, which maybe is already factored in.
It's Concord.
Concord.
Concord is the one
Yeah,
that we
Concord
pay
charges.
per,
Yeah.
like service per specialized instruction program.
Right.
We pay per program unit that they're in. So if
Got
they need 2 special education classes, we pay for those 2 special education classes, not necessarily a flat rate for special education. So we have some kids who cost maybe $5,000, other kids that cost $56,000, just depending on their programming and needs. So it's not a flat rate for all students over there.
And this is figured out in line 48, that's what those costs would be, the tuition costs.
That's
So
tuition,
it'd
yep.
be like
Your
a
569.
flat rate for
Mhm,
Co-Brown
yep.
and whatever is
Correct.
considered for.
And I've got several spreadsheets that are all, we keep track of all that nitty gritty stuff. And I meet with the team here to go over those numbers, meet with Lisa several times to make sure we've got our calculations right. And that's how we calculate that.
That's up substantially, isn't it? Proposed budget.
For special education placements, no,
No, it's
it's
down.
down by 170,000 almost.
I'm looking at it now.
You're looking at the proposed
Yeah,
default? Yeah.
Okay.
It's up,
And that's not from your high school tuition, I'll tell you that. That's from your out of district placements and changes and student needs, things like that.
So that
So
one's
this-
down.
So this, I thought I got it, but now I'm not sure. So the special placement tuition is our high school
Special
Kids.
education tuition.
plus any other, if they're not at Co-Brown, Concord, or.
Plus out of district.
So
Yep. So if we
so
have a
that's
student at
all
Monarch,
that.
Spalding, any of
Okay.
those special education placements, that's included in that special
Okay.
placements. So, and
So it's.
that's broken out. You can see, so on your sheet where I provided you the breakout, right? So go to that where I've got all the like pre-K to 8, Co-Brown High School. You can see your pre-K to 8 special placements is 328,000 and change. Those are out of district placements. Your 9 through 12 plus, which anytime I talk about high school, I'll refer to it 12 plus, that's the 22. Co-Brown, 316,000 and change. Concord High, 800,000. Pembroke, 10,000. That's your tuition stuff. You've got out of district in there, that's 1.2. That's your out of district special education placement schools.
I'm glad you put the number of
Yeah.
students in there too, so you can compare it.
And Pembroke, I'm not going to give you a direct answer just because there's few students with special education and I don't want them identifiable. So I just put less than 7 because that's kind of my cutoff is 7. And those numbers again may change once we get numbers from the survey after the 15th. Those will change. Because there won't be 9, there'll be probably closer to 16, 17. For Phil Brown. Any other questions with placements?
So just supplies.
Yep, I think that's it for my updates.
Any other questions on special ed? All right, the next section is your co-curriculars. There wasn't any change that I'm aware of for co-curricular. Did you change anything from last time?
We just updated the
Just the appendix?
The board had asked Mr. Reeve to go through and highlight the positions that were not filled last year.
That's the yellow, I think you
Yep,
had?
yep.
Yep, okay.
He can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so some years for instance, the last few years, we have not been able to field the softball team, so that's highlighted. This year, we'll most likely be
Page
able
23.
to have a softball team. Same thing with baseball. We didn't really have baseball for a couple of years, but now we have baseball again. So things like that. We haven't had a play in quite some time. So. But we would like to leave that money in there because you never know when those things come about. We also moved, for this coming year, we're moving the boys B assistant coaches to become A basketball assistant coaches because it's just a lot more with basketball, a lot more games, a lot more players, things of that nature. And we traditionally do not have a boys or girls B team for soccer. So we have consistently had basketball every year. So essentially, those are the real changes for the co-curriculars. Oh, and cheerleading. Sometimes we have cheerleading, sometimes we don't. It just depends on who wants to volunteer lots of hours for very little money. So.
And you'll notice in that section, if you look over to the default, I carried the full amount of what we currently have budgeted, not the amount proposed. And the reason being because this particular program is fluid, it could change programs, but you shouldn't lose funding for it. So you should be able to have this current year expenditure, should you end in default. The next section is support services. You're gonna find that on pages 9 and 10. That's your 2100 accounts. There really aren't any big changes in this section. It went up 7,730. The only big difference is in the guidance salaries. There was 5 additional days that were included in that for the summer.
For the nurse.
Yeah, but that's on the this is just for didn't you have guidance too?
No, just nurse.
Just nurse? Why did I think guidance?
Those are just salary increases. For guidance.
Let me just double check the roster then, because I thought I had a note for that. And it may just be myself, just losing my mind. Yep, it's just me losing my mind. So that's for the nursing. So we added 5 additional days for the nursing. And that amount for that 5 additional days will not carry to the default.
And we've been trying to add that for
Years.
For literally years.
Literally.
I think you were lucky, didn't you get some money in ESSER for that?
She received a
1 year.
stipend for a couple of
Yeah.
years, yep. But she comes in every summer to get ready for, she gets the high school stuff out and gets the new people and the new kindergartners in, and it takes a lot of time. And I'd really like to get that for her, but we won't if it's a default. Even if the default is bigger than the current budget, we still won't get it.
So that's really it in that section. Any questions about other support services? The next section is instructional services, which is 2,200 accounts. That's on pages 10 through 12. The changes in this is just library, that is just CBA. There's no FTE changes. And staff, course reimbursement and stipends are the changes there.
And those are contractual.
Correct, except for, I think line, why do I think there's one that's not?
76.
76.
Yeah.
That's
training.
76 is the one that is not contractual.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll notice that the default is different. The default goes back to 2000.
Right.
Because it's not contractual. Any questions on that? The next section is the 2300 account. Now, there were no numbers in this section of your packet, but the last meeting, this is the school board section, as they call it. School board services that include the salaries for your treasurer, your clerk, moderator, some district school board stipends, legal expenses. The one thing that we were looking to request is on the treasurer's salary, which is on page 13 on line, and there's no line number there, which is bizarre.
It would be
101.
100. It would be 100.
Yeah, I don't know why there's no line number there. It's strange.
Different.
Yeah. So line 100. So we typically, we had a new treasurer come in for the SAU, and when we did that, we took a look at the whole SAU as a whole, because they were all the treasurers are being paid a different rate. Some were high, some were extremely low. Deerfield was on the very low side. So I think the highest was like 4,000. Everybody else is around 2,500. And then there were, I think, one or two, your district and another district that was 1,000 and 1,500. So I would like to propose that we bring your treasurer to 2,500 so that they are in the market with the rest of the treasurers in the SAU. Your treasurer has done a phenomenal job. He's been on with your district for a few years now, and he's very responsive. He gets his work done. We never have to, question or ask him for everything. Everything is on time. So I would, and it is a lot of work. So he does provide information for the auditors as well as the town report as well as signing off on every manifest and bank reconciliation. So I've added in some extra dollars for that. Again, if you end in default, that would not carry through. The other change is the auditing fee, and that's just the yearly contract, as well as actuary services. I believe I talked about that last year in regards that the district needs actuary services moving forward. Not because you've done anything wrong or we've done anything wrong. It's just required by GASB. On the next line, which is 106, which is the attorney, we currently are budgeted at 10,000. I budgeted 15,000. Looking at the past several years, we have come over budget in that line. I think 15,000 is probably even on the low side comparative to what we've done. But I kind of wanted to leave that for discussion for the school board and how
Last year we were 18, we spent 18.
and I believe the year before that was even higher.
We got 10,000 in the default,
Correct.
so hopefully we can move it. Because that's one of those areas you have to pay the bill, whether you have the money from the default or not.
Right.
So it ends up coming from somewhere else.
The next line is on page 14, which is line 107. That's the district share. District share is the district assessment. It is the school's portion that pays or covers a portion of the SAU budget. And Deerfield covers 22.7% of the SAU share of the overall budget.
And SAU budget was approved by the full board.
It was. Yep. So that section has gone up 22,000. Any questions on any of that? And I think I forgot to add in the district assessment. You did get it at the SAU full board, but I will make sure to include that in your next packet, because I did mean to. I noticed it earlier today when I was going through my packet again. Wasn't in there. I apologize for that. The next section is administrative services, which is your 2,400 accounts. So that's going to be your admin services. That has like your principal, assistant principal. The principal's contract will be year 2 of 3. So that's where you're getting a change there. And then we've got some renewals coming up. The big change I would say for this would be on your technician line, which is 114, which is on page 15. We have, there's no FTE changes, but we did need to add an additional 40 hours of OT. And the reason why we needed to do that is because that particular staff member or that category used to be salaried, and the labor law has changed, and that position is no longer allowed to be salaried because of the duties that they provide. There are 3 categories that they have to mirror up against, which 1, they have to meet a certain salary limit. 2, they have to supervise, and then they look at the individual duties that that individual performs. In all 3 of those categories, that position does not apply to. So because of that, we needed to change that position to an hourly position. So the hours that that individual or that position typically works is over and beyond a regular schedule, like most salary people. So we were thinking about 40 additional hours would be needed. Those 40 additional hours would not carry forward to the default.
I would say it's typically gonna be the summertime that we would need extra. Usually
Mm.
the tech folks are getting ready for school to start, getting all the technology up and running. So we wanted to add some overtime to go out.
The other change is on 118. This is the maintenance contracts. At the SAU level, we discussed, every year about how our director of IT bulk shops our technology, our software, and then we bill out to the districts per utilization. That's the line. So when we talk about that, that's the line that is in. It's in line 118. And we're looking at a slight decrease. So we'll bulk shop, get the best prices, and then divvy out the expenses to each of the schools per their utilization. I've added in your communications, which is your internet. Let's see, other than that, that's really it for that section. Any questions on that? The next section is your maintenance and operations. So we've added in your salaries for your custodians. We have added or are requesting 1 additional position.
Would you mind if I clarified that?
Yes, you may.
So in the past years, we have always had a full-time day person, a part-time evening person, and 3 full-time night people. Over the years, we've not been able to fill full-time positions. So we had 2 part-time positions budgeted over maybe the last 2 years or so. And what we're trying to do is bring that full-time position back so that we can have something to offer full-time. So we've, for many years, had 3 full-time night custodians. We have none right now. The only custodian we have is a part-time custodian, and we have to contract out with Citywide, who are people that come. They do a wonderful job, but they are very expensive. And so I just wanted to make sure I clarified that although it looks like we might be adding one, we're really trying to get back to what the original roster was, maybe back in 1819 or
Yeah,
1920.
somewhere around there, yeah. It was several years ago.
Yeah,
And then we could get rid of Citywide.
if we could hire 3 full-time people, which we have not been able to do. But if we could, we'll have a part-time night person, 3 full-time night people, 1 full-time day, and then Chris can fill some.
And I think in the roster, I want to say we broke it out that way.
Yes, we did.
We
I copied it.
So yeah, in the roster, we broke it out that way, exactly how Kristen described.
So is there then a also simultaneous cut somewhere where we're cutting citywide from the budget?
So we just went, so right now Citywide's being billed to us as a contracted service, utilizing the funds that we budgeted for positions. We just aren't applying those funds towards actual staff because we don't have the staff. Instead, those funds are covering the contracted service instead.
We pay one person part-time. The rest of them, so the rest of that salary line goes to Citywide.
So the budget actuals for 23 and 24 were for Chris and a part-time custodian.
We had
And we had Citywide.
we did have Citywide and we had a full-time day person.
Okay.
But that full-time day person is no longer with us.
So then, if we go back to 23-24, there's the custodian salaries line, but you're saying the difference there is in the contracted service?
It's
line?
in the, I believe, on page 18. It should be in the 147, so the fees for that citywide should be in there. I'd have to go back to make sure that that's where that was billed
That's
to.
like a reduction of $10,000.
Yeah, but that could be a change in something else that they made on their schedule.
So I guess my question is that if we're budgeting for full-time custodian salaries, then we should also be budgeting for less citywide, and that's.
We aren't
never
budgeting for
budgeted.
citywide at all. So we didn't budget for citywide even from the beginning. So we budgeted for the positions. We were unable to hire for the positions. We actually had another district that was utilizing citywide. And so through conversations, we thought maybe Deerfield could benefit from that because they were having a hard time filling the positions. So because they had the funding available just in a different line, they were able to utilize the service. So it's not actually budgeted anywhere for that particular service, just the positions.
We often have money left over from summer. We have a summer line that we pay our, so with that money, plus what we weren't paying for the other part-time, plus the full-time day, plus all of that added up, we were able to pay Citywide.
That additional position would not make it to default. So that is not included in there. That's why those numbers are different. There is a decrease in utilities. Where did I see that? I flipped my page. Maybe that should not be in there. Yes, it is. On line, on oil for line 138. So when I go through and I look, we don't have the actual rate for next year yet, but I did do a slight increase in the rate, but then I went through every bill from the last year and I took a look at the bills that are currently going on this year and then did an estimate of how many gallons are actually being used until we get a rate. Unfortunately, the contracts overlap years, so it makes it a little bit more challenging to budget for an actual rate. The other change would be for a 143, which is your liability insurance. I'm seeing a trend for that it's been going up anywhere between 6 to 8% in the last few years. That is our Primex that covers our insurance for our building and other things. Not health insurance, but just property and liability insurance is what that covers. And then your contracted service went down. That you'll be able to see in your Appendix C. I believe you talked about that last time. Any questions about any of that?
I have a question about ground maintenance. Have we gotten there yet or no?
Ground maintenance, yep, that was one of the lines that I think Kristen went over before on 145. That should be an Appendix C.
Maybe we talked about this and maybe it was because we didn't have any money in the budget, but the actual is significantly less than what we're proposing. Is that because we couldn't spend money or is it? Do we know why there's about a $40,000 difference?
We should be able to see that. In ground, was it ground maintenance you said?
Yeah.
So it looks like. Yes. Ground maintenance. Ground maintenance went up. Is that the one you said, or did you say another one? I'm sorry.
I was just talking about the actuals.
Oh, actual.
From last year for the budget.
Oh, gotcha. I'd have to pull the line to see what was in there. I don't know what projects you.
Is it correct in the appendix? Because there's numbers for 23, 24.
That would have been what they budgeted. I don't know if that was actual.
Yeah, I mean, if we could just take a look.
Yeah, I'll see what's in that line.
And maybe it was just that we didn't get something or we didn't get a service that we had budgeted for, but obviously we're not using $40,000.
Yeah,
I want to say it was a new contract that ended up being cheaper.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I certainly can pull the line to see
Yeah.
what occurred in it.
We did change, Church is saying we did change our contract, so.
We did change contractor, that is correct.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then why is this going up? What are you
Right.
saying?
His note says increase in yearly landscape costs, increasing the scope of work. Received a lesser price for rolling over a contract for the 23-24 season,
Mhm.
and then seed fertilizer and field mix.
Goes with turf care.
It's, yeah, and it also looks like summer, so line striping and crack sealing, so there's additional dollars in there for that too.
We have, I labeled the contracts too. You had asked for that, Amber. The maintenance, so we have contracts. Our lawn maintenance contract is yearly.
Yep.
Currently expires in June of 25.
Mhm.
Our turf care program is also yearly. Currently, it will expire in June 30th, 2025. And then further down, we have a contract with Granite State Plumbing and Heating. So we do have a few contracts in place, but our snow removal is a 3-year contract and will expire in May of 26.
So it could be like, I don't remember 23, 24, but you know, we budget for snow removal and if
Mhm.
it doesn't snow very much, we don't
Correct.
use it.
Mhm.
Okay. It would be helpful just to understand why
Yeah,
there's a $40,000 discrepancy. I mean, not to say we
yeah, sure. I'll pull
shouldn't
it
be
for you.
budgeting for it, but it would be helpful to know.
Mhm. And all of those contracts, because most of them, they were all really yearly contracts and we haven't had a multi-year contract
Mhm.
out of a default, that
Yeah.
I have to keep the current, the defaulted amount moving forward. Any other questions on that? I just want to make sure, I'm just going to put a note here so I'll have that for you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next section is transportation. That's going to be on page 18 and 19, lines 148 to 153. This is actually going down to $2,300. Some of the reason is McKinney-Vento changes is really, I would say, is the biggest driver in the decrease in this section.
And that's McKinney, okay. I see.
The other is the fact that in the default, there were 3 buses in the high school. And so I put it back down to 2, so I don't know if that's a conversation
Oh, that'll be a conversation.
that needs to
Mhm.
happen or not.
Yes, we will need to have that conversation. Last year, I remember the third bus was like 70,000.
It is approximately 70,000, yeah.
So if you,
I know it says 44, but that's because McKinney-Vento's in there too.
okay, so McKinney-Vento transportation, and that's for people who don't know, that's for homeless students.
Correct.
And students in foster care.
Oh, thank you. You've probably told me that like 4 times.
Everyone always forgets foster.
Those are billed in the regular transportation line.
Correct, because they're not
They're
special ed.
Special ed. Okay.
So it kind of throws off, it's hard to calculate the bus when you look at that line in particular.
Got it, okay. So removing the bus is not going to remove 70,000 because of the increases from,
There is no, I did not put a third bus in there when I budgeted. I budgeted the two the school board always asks for. So if you add a third bus, it's actually going to increase that line.
oh, right.
But then I carried the full expense for the default. Because it would need to stay in there because it's currently in the default. Same thing happened last year, yeah.
We budgeted for two, there's three in the default.
I
In case you don't remember.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
It does get confusing. 'Cause
It does.
multiple years in a row, there was deliberative bus things. It is definitely a discussion the board needs to have. I don't know if the board wants to have that discussion tonight, or if we wanna sort of go through the budget and then talk about those types of issues at our next meeting, once people have had a second to digest.
I think I can tell you, we didn't eliminate the third bus because we didn't need the third bus. We eliminated it because we've never been able to get a driver. So the issue, I think it would be great to say we could add a third bus and it's in the default and that's wonderful. But if you decide to do go round, and you don't need to talk about it tonight, but if you decide to do that, it's likely gonna be one bus for each. Because I don't think we'll get a third bus.
Which, so obviously Deerfield is a huge town. You know,
It's wide-
area-wise,
widespread.
not
Square footage, right.
population-wise. And so I would just caution that if we do one bus per high school, the bus ride will be an incredibly long bus ride unless we have a central bus pickup.
Right.
Which we would have to figure out. I don't know how we would do that, but I'm sure we could figure that out. So that will have to be a discussion that the board will have to have. Do we want to budget, first of all, do we want to budget for 3 buses for high school? Knowing that we have not had a third bus for, I don't know, a long time. And I don't anticipate a third bus, but you never know, and we still don't have all the buses we would like for DCS, if I recall.
Correct.
And that's not necessarily because of the buses are chock full of students, but again, Deerfield is humongous. So all the kids' rides are an hour because we only have limited buses. So we'll have to discuss 2 things. 1, do we want to budget for 3 high school buses? 2, if we're only budgeting for 2 buses, what are we doing with buses? And that's, the bus, where the bus is going doesn't necessarily have to be part of the budget discussion, but it's sort of a natural.
I wonder if there would be a different charge if it was going to a different direction. I don't know if they charge us just for a bus or is it?
Well,
What
when they calculate their rates, it
It
is
is,
per the
yeah.
miles of where they're going, so it could be slightly different.
And if they're only doing a central stop, then it could be different.
It could be, I'll have to reach out and ask how that would work.
So yeah, fun discussions ahead. I will not push anyone on it tonight. I think we will need to discuss it, obviously, as part of our finalizing the budget. We do have 2 more dedicated sessions where we're talking about the budget before we need to vote on it before it goes to MBC. But it is something I need people to start thinking about.
It would be nice to have the final numbers of where the kids are going to before we actually. make
Yeah, no, I think that's
that
fair.
decision.
Okay. Anyways, hold on.
All right. And then your special ed transportation is in this section, and that is going up slightly.
And the increase in your special ed transportation is directly related to Co-Brown. So throwing that into your conversation as well would probably be a good idea when you're having that
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that?
So your special ed transportation increases are solely because of the specialized transportation needed to get some students with IEPs over to Colbrook. Not necessarily because the students require a specialized transportation vehicle, but because we have no other means to get them there because
No,
there's
what
no
you're saying,
bus.
if we had a regular bus, they might be able to take that bus. They wouldn't.
I mean, maybe, but it's something to consider, and I think there's bigger conversations that have to happen to go along with your.
Potentially not if we're doing a centralized stop.
We talked earlier, and my recommendation was not to touch your special ed transportation, because if you can't get a bus, then you have to pay to get those students to school. So that was,
Right.
we talked about my budget.
Okay.
You can't count on a driver.
So the increase of 4,900.
And 22,500.
Oh.
That's just summer.
Whoa, oh.
49 is summer, your regular year, your school year is 22.5.
On line 151.
And those costs are directly related to your students going over to Co-Brown.
Okay.
But like Patty said, like for next year, that's not going to change, but I think it will have trickle effects for years after whatever you decide for transportation. Because next year, there'll be more kids there.
Right.
More students with IEPs, and then the year after, there's gonna be more students with IEPs. So just something to consider.
And what you're saying is that having a bus to Co-Brown doesn't necessarily resolve the issue of special ed transportation.
It could help. It could
might
help mitigate your costs in the future. For next year, it's not gonna solve the problem outright, but years after, it may definitely solve a lot of your transportation costs.
One other thing I wanted to just say about the buses is that, as most of you know, we are not legally required to pay for busing for high school, except for students who require it for their IEPs. Right.
Only if they require transportation to get to school or for medical reasons.
Right.
And they have an IEP, yes.
So, just putting that out there. I mean, I would personally not advocate to get rid of high school busing, but I've heard it suggested.
We paid for it. We paid for it.
I just want to make sure, just because a student has an IEP doesn't mean they need transportation.
Right.
Just putting that out there. So,
Right.
doesn't always go
Hand
in
in
hand.
hand. Any other transportation questions? Okay, the next section is your fringe benefits. So your health insurance, dental insurance, and so forth. Typically, we do not get the health rates until like our November 9th or 12th. We actually just got them yesterday.
Wow.
So the amount that you have in your budget's actually going to go down. Your health rate that you will be receiving is actually going to be 5%, which is really good. And the reason why I say that is because I received some communication probably about a month ago that Health Trust, which is the big provider other than school care, if you remember the conversation last year, they were going up about 20 to 30% last year. Then we got a communication this year that they were going up another 20 to 30%. So I was like, oh no, hopefully school care doesn't do that. In the meantime, I then received a communication from school care that depending on the district and the utilization, it could go as high as 15. Your district ended up with 5. And Deerfield tends to be in our SAU wide one of the highest ones, and I think they're actually going to be one of the lowest ones this time. So 5% is very, very good. So I'm very happy to report that this number in this budget will actually go down the next version by about 120,000. It will go down or so.
And can you explain the difference in the proposed budget and the default?
Yeah, so the reason why it would be different is if there's any
FTEs that aren't in the budget?
yes, but that needs to be looked at.
Okay. It looked, I mean,
Oh, no, that's
I can't
about,
ever
no, that's
remember.
about right. No, that's about right.
Right, if we're adding FTEs.
I was looking at
It
that
wouldn't
number
be a
like
default.
$260,000 difference between, and that's not.
No, no. It's
That's
about
what my
40.
brain was looking at, is what I'm saying. Yes, but the reason why they're not exactly the same is because if there's any FTE changes
That don't carry over.
that don't carry forward,
Got-
there wouldn't be, yeah. So like the custodial position
Right,
is an example.
the part-time para or the 95% para or whatever.
And yeah, any additional position that would require benefits would not be included.
Okay.
Dental insurance, that it's 5% in dental, that is the actual increase, which is actually high. Typically, you know, when I first started, I've been here almost 10 years now, and it was 0% for, I want to say like 3 years, and then it went up to like 2%. I think last year was 4%, and now it's up to 5%. So while it is a smaller dollar value, just because the cost of dental insurance is less, that's a pretty high percentage. Hopefully that doesn't continue to rise, but that's where that's coming from. Another positive change is in the teacher retirement line, which is 160. We received communication from the state that the teacher retirement is going to be decreasing from 19.64 down to 19.23.
But we still have an increase.
You will, because you've had CBA changes and
Salary increases.
the increases have actually occurred, so that will, the rate is just applied different or less. We do not have any proposed increases in this budget yet, so that is something the school board will need to discuss and determine. And then we can add that.
Salary increases.
Yep.
There are
What-
increases.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
I highlighted them all in pink.
I meant salary increases. The other very large, so any questions about fringe benefits before I go to the next section? The next one is your food service transfer line, which is 171. So the food service budget, as you may remember, has to net to zero. And what I mean by that is exactly what you expend out, the revenue needs to offset it. If it does not, any difference has to be covered by your operating budget. The last several years, we've been able to fund the difference of this food service program with the unassigned fund balance, so the surplus from that program, because that program can carry a surplus from year to year. Back during the COVID years, the program was able to have additional funding from the state, and that funding was what created the surplus. So over the last couple of years, we've been utilizing to offset the program. Well, we're running out of funding for that. So now we are using it for this current year to offset the budget, but for next year, as of right now, unless their funding isn't used in the program, we're not looking to have any additional surplus to cover the balance. So to cover it, we're going to need $71,000 to cover that budget. The reason why it's high is because the operating costs are high. If you have positions that have health benefits, it automatically makes that program not sustainable. There's just not enough revenue that comes in from either your lunch meals being served, in your federal and state revenue being received.
Okay.
The actual program itself, that budget only went up, I think, less than $1,000. It's on page 49 to 50. You'll see it actually only went up like $542. So the program itself didn't really go up. And actually it will go down a little bit more because of the health change, that the rate, so that there will be a change to the food service budget as well the next round. So there'll be a little change. So when I make the change to the food service budget, line 171 will also go down. Does that make sense?
Did we increase the cost of lunches?
We did.
a little bit?
We did. So we're hoping to bring in a little bit more revenue from that.
You can only increase a dime, it only increases a
Yes.
dime.
That's so
But
time.
that's per year,
Oh,
I think
so
so.
that's per chain.
I think that's
I
per
think it's
year.
per year.
Yeah.
So at some point this year, we can increase
Yes.
another dime if we want to.
for next year, yeah.
There's just not a lot of revenue to pull from.
It's the
Yeah.
personal cost.
It really
Having
is.
People to run the kitchen and the food costs are up.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, as we all know, as we go to the grocery store, everything's
Every
very
week.
expensive.
Every week.
And lunch prices are very low.
And the lunch places are very low. Let's see, as of right now, on line 175, you'll see that there's no money in there for your trust funds. That will remain zero until after voting day. If you should have any warrant articles that are being put money into a trust, would then go into that fund. But that would not go in until after everything's voted. We're anticipating slightly less funding in grants. And then other than that, that's really the changes that I have for you this evening.
All right. Does anyone have questions?
I know that's a lot.
Yeah. Is this the only night that you are here, or will you be back another day? I know you and I have many fun days ahead at the MBC together, but.
Typically Amber does the presentation for every board.
Right.
And then if there are issues or questions, I will carry them back to her
That's
unless
fine.
there's a specific, like, oh my gosh, we have this issue, we need Amber.
For sure. Okay.
But typically, if there's questions I can't answer or we have to get research, I just relay that to Amber.
That was my recollection. I just wanted to make sure.
And if you have
Before
any
I-
questions, as you guys are looking through it before the next meeting, if you get them to Patty, we can get you answers
And have them ready for the next.
and have them ready for you.
So if anyone has Amber specific questions, I would ask them tonight.
Or like I said,
you
or
do it
send
in
them.
class.
Yeah,
Sometimes I can answer questions.
you can answer lots of
Better you than
questions.
me.
She can answer lots of questions.
Yes, you can.
She's very knowledgeable
Yes,
about these
she
budgets.
is.
Anything? You want to discuss right now? Instead, I would encourage everyone to look at this multiple times before our next meeting. We will get probably a new packet.
You will get a new packet for sure. Because there'll hopefully be some tuition changes, and then there'll be health benefit changes. There'll be probably special ed changes.
Yeah.
So there'll be some significant ones in your favor, hopefully, that, or maybe offset some of the other increases that might come along.
So don't get too attached to this packet. You'll
Yeah.
get a new one.
And they'll say 2024.
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be the right year. I won't fast forward.
But do keep track of these things because we won't get new like special ed handouts every week. Unless they like really change significantly, I would assume.
Yeah, I'm hoping after one more change, they really won't change much.
And keeping your packet is good because if Amber puts a handout in here, she's not gonna put the same handout in another subsequent packet. Usually the packets are just gonna be the update of anything that was updated.
Yes.
So the appendix for facilities and all that, you probably wanna keep that.
Yeah, so like the
That's
tax
okay.
rate history, surplus history, that stuff, it won't be back in here. I do want to let you know that Deerfield's tax rate was the first tax rate that was set for our SAU this year.
Is that because we harassed them so many times?
No, it is because we got things in really early and
Awesome. Closed up the books, did a
Closed
good job, Trish had everything wrapped up.
Yeah.
Nobody
Trish did a
any-
fabulous job.
Any last
Good
minute,
job,
yeah,
Trish.
first district, good job.
Awesome. Cool. Does anyone have anything else for budget tonight? All right, we still have many more days of budget fun, so we don't want to spend it all in one night.
Thank you both very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it. And
You're
again,
welcome to stay. You're also welcome to leave if you would.
Might actually take the opportunity. to
Yeah.
leave.
Please
Yeah,
do.
got a lot of budget children.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of meetings this week.
Are there extras of that, pages?
I'll scan them and put them in the drive to Jess. All right. So that they're historical. Put there.
Okay. Department presentation planning. I added, for Ellen. Did you want to sort of lead off or do you want me to?
Can I make one comment first?
You requested this.
I'll start and you'll remember.
As far as the curriculum. review
Yeah.
board? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought I was gonna do it when we did curriculum review board, so I was looking at that like.
I didn't want to forget, so I added it.
I don't wanna forget to tell you that Amy is excited about data. That's her jam. So she does wanna get in to be able to go over the testing and data comparison. So when we're doing the dates, that we can just keep her in mind too.
The curriculum review.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the last curriculum review board, I did mention that part of our goals was that we wanted presentations.
Yeah.
We wanted a literacy one, a math one, and a science one, 3 presentations throughout the year. And they said, well, they seemed excited about it actually, but they want to know, what do we want? What exactly do we want? So I said, well, I really need to go back to the board and have that discussion so we can then get the information back to the curriculum review board so that they can set up the presentations. So that's what we need to discuss. I know we've already discussed it here and there, but we haven't really finalized it.
We haven't made a specific request to the departments of what exactly we would like to hear about. I would also love to sort of pick some dates, so we can throw around dates and see when everyone is available. Otherwise, it ends up getting pushed and pushed and pushed, and then
Things come up.
and
I know a couple
meetings
things.
get canceled or whatever.
Yeah, and a couple things that we've talked about that I would like to put forward is we've talked about, one, we'd like to know about new programs that they have. How are they doing? You know, because there's a new program in math, literacy has gone through a new program. You know, how are they doing? What are they doing? Does it work? And I think secondly, is there data to support what they're saying? You know, how are we doing as a whole in that particular subject?
And in terms of data, are you talking about test scores?
Yeah.
Or
I'd say I'm kind of leaving it open to them, but I would like to hear test scores because that's what a lot of public is always hearing about. But is there other data that we have we're doing?
or data that's meaningful to
Teachers.
the department? I mean,
Exactly.
I don't know how they assess themselves or their effectiveness, but if they have internal data that they find meaningful, I would love to hear it.
I think if you got Amy first and she went over, so you could understand the student data and the I-rated data. And then when they come along, you can say, oh, math was one of the areas that we heard about that, you know, primary grades are struggling. So tell me what's going on and what are you guys doing? And, you know, the middle school can address I'm not saying math scores are low, I was just using that as an example. That, you know, middle school teachers can talk about the new big ideas that you
Yeah, so maybe
guys.
start with the data and then talk with what are they doing for programs? Is it
Yeah.
a new program? How's it working? Where are they?
Where they're seeing growth and.
Yeah, and students' reception to it. I would love to hear sort of experiences if the students are engaged with it. Because I know a lot of them have they have the main curriculum, but then there are add-on things that students can engage in online or whatever. If those are being utilized, that would be helpful to know.
Well, that's like another area. It's like we're talking about technology support.
Yeah, if they're, I think some of it is built into their program.
Some of the curriculum
Yeah.
has technology, and actually most of it knows, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think most of it does. I don't know if that's too vague, or if that's helpful.
No, it is helpful. I think that they were more concerned that they don't really have a ton of data because they
Yeah.
are so new,
Yeah, that's fine.
and the new programs wouldn't reflect the current
Sure.
data, right?
Yeah.
But we certainly, if it's after January, we'll have 2 benchmarks of data that we can report out from iReady. September, we do iReady in September, and then we'll do it again in January. So
How
there's.
about, do we still do ECAP?
No, but the testing, state testing, they embargoed it and it was supposed to be released last week, but it wasn't, so it's coming any day, state testing.
So, it'd be nice to maybe just have an overview of the state
That's
testing,
what
then this
Amy's
is some of the
gonna do.
local
Yeah.
testing that we do, and then these are the programs that we do.
Mhm.
Maybe that's kind of-
So maybe we need to set up first testing day.
Because Amy will speak to the iReady
Yeah.
data as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And then when you do the benchmarks in January, if anybody that's doing a presentation wants to reference those,
Sure.
we can.
it's New Hampshire SAS is the,
Is that what it's called?
yeah.
I know it's
And there is a
something
science,
different.
5th and 8th grade do the science.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, it's 5th and 8th grade, you see 4th and 8th grade.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, can you remind me? Did we set a date for Concord to come and do that presentation?
We did. Oh, do you think that was here on my desk? I believe it was the 20th.
Of November?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Oh, what should we do in December? See, I knew, I had a piece of
Right.
paper, I put a sticky on it, and I think I did not put it before.
I also don't remember.
I have CHS Deerfield report present on the November 20th,
Wow.
5:30 to
Oh,
6:30.
right, oh,
That's right.
oh,
There's
right.
that come
So
early.
it's our
Yeah,
next meeting.
that's right. Thank you.
Or 5:30 to
Kristen.
6, or I don't know what the time,
Yeah,
but
I did ask
definitely
him to
starting at
come on. I mean,
5:30.
I could pull up his-
Okay,
I
right.
did ask him.
As a reminder for
Yeah.
everybody, our next meeting starts at 5:30. Yeah. There was something percolating in here, I was like, we have
my desk.
we have something coming.
Yeah.
So, when we're talking about data, I would personally shoot for the December 18th. That'll be after budget.
That's Amy.
That would be Amy. But
Let me
obviously,
just look at the calendar in case there's something.
So how are you thinking it different where Amy comes and does the data and then we have another meeting where the teachers come and talk about the programs?
Yes.
Okay, so are we going to have then, is Amy gonna do like all 3 subjects
Yes,
data?
she'll do all the data.
And then the next meeting, we're gonna have 2 more meetings, so maybe we could break it up and do
Yep.
like whichever you think works the best, like literacy by itself or math, whoever has the more to talk about maybe, and then put the other 2.
So
Science
you-
will probably have the least amount to talk about.
She said.
It does. But it's life.
they
It's
don't
a
even
long
have a
time.
thing.
Look up our social studies.
I feel like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the January, are you talking about January? Do you want somebody the 8th and then somebody the 22nd, or do we want to do? What,
We don't have to do them both. Should we do
Yeah, I
both
was
in
thinking,
January?
no, I said
No.
maybe spread them out a little.
I would
Okay.
say, I would lean to the work sessions, so the second meeting
Okay.
for January, February.
okay, so what I'll do is I'll talk to do you want math and science together? Or,
Whatever works best for you, I think makes the most sense.
okay,
I think you throw it out and see when people could come.
okay,
And if there's 2 groups that could come the same night.
And I think it has a lot to do with like, what's the difference between the grade levels for, math and literacy? If there's a lot of difference between one, then it makes more sense. We're gonna have a longer presentation. We're gonna do this in case, we're gonna do this later on.
hmm yeah, literacy will definitely be the longer one, I
I
think.
think so too, so it might make sense to do that.
Yeah. Although math will probably have a lot. I've been thinking about the two
We could
programs.
add a third presentation.
Yeah.
we
we
can
want-
always do later on.
Somebody else later on.
Right, we have March, we have April,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we could always
we
do
have
that.
more meetings.
Yep.
Right.
Big
Well,
ideas
and they
and
started the other one squared.
yeah, Eureka
Eureka.
Square.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's new too.
So I would throw it out if they could attend any of the second meetings of the month.
Okay, so January 22nd or February 19th.
My birthday,
Oh,
Wow.
I mean, which would you prefer on your birthday?
not math. No, I'm just kidding. I was an English major, so.
So January 22nd, February 19th, March 19th.
Sounds good.
Right?
Okay.
And they pick.
I'll let
Or
them
you
pick. No, I'll
This
let
is
them,
what it
no,
is.
no.
And I will try to get Amy, make sure she can come on December 18th.
I was gonna say, we usually don't because of the election. But this was for the second March meeting, but this would be the first meeting for new
First
school board
meeting for new-
members,
for
which
new
feels
Mm,
like a lot.
We don't need one person.
We can do April.
It's only
Doesn't
one.
matter.
Throw them right in.
We can do April, we can skip March, just do an April.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just mainly in our goals. We really want to hear what's going on, how's it going, how are the programs working,
Yeah.
and everything. So it's,
Alright, so we'll skip March and do April 16th. That works.
Okay. And then you'll ask Amy about December 8th. Excellent. Okay. Anything else for the?
No, that was the main thing. We just want to be able to get back to her.
Perfect. And then C is packet and agenda preparation. So there was a request from Stacy Marcioni that we provide all documents to the public in advance of our meetings. We have discussed this as a board before. Maybe not this current iteration of the board. Okay. Like some board ago, we talked about it. So I'll give my little spiel and then we can open up for discussion. I like the idea as in theory. I think what I would worry about is that we don't have a lot of documents always that far in advance. We publish our agendas the week before. So I don't think it will ever be the case that we'll be publishing documents with the agenda, like on our website, because for the budget, for instance, we get that, the day of the meeting, the day before the meeting. And we don't want to keep republishing agendas because I think that would be very confusing. So I would be concerned about an implication that we aren't providing things in advance before a meeting on purpose, which I don't think is generally the case. So like our special ed presentation, for instance, Jess and I were finishing that the day of the meeting. I think we put it in the drive, that afternoon. So I think there would have to be an understanding that a lot of these we're working on them to present at the board meeting, not the board has been looking at these things for weeks and then we're bringing them up for discussion. I would also be concerned about added administrative burden to the SAU office. We don't have a dedicated person for Deerfield to prepare agendas, prepare budget, or prepare agenda packets. So we would have to be very careful, I think, and thoughtful about how we were requesting that, if that's what the board wants to do.
Who are the other boards?
They don't.
They don't.
No. There are districts that do. So Concord publishes everything in advance. Raymond publishes everything in advance.
All the budget stuff too.
Yes.
It would be a pretty big culture shift here in terms of, I think as hard as I've tried, I tell people I have to have it a week before the meeting, I have to have this, I have to have that, and things just trickle in. So your choice would be, then we're not talking about that for another month, so that you're at a meeting and you've got business and you don't want to talk about it because we didn't get it by the deadline. So this has been like a forever problem. I think that would be just the explanation to the public that, like you said, it's some trust. Like we're certainly not going to hold on to things that we have and we can put up. And I think Ashley, my new executive assistant,
As I say, Ash, our
there's going to be a transition period where we have no one to do anything. But I will do my best to do as much as we can. But I think it's doable. I think we just have to hammer home the point that people can't bring things last minute. We can't, if somebody wants something for the board, it's got to be submitted earlier.
Well, I also I feel like if you are waiting until you get the information, it's more up-to-date information too. Like if she gets the information on the school rates that day, she's going to put it in the, and so then you're going to have all of, well, this is not really the number now, and it isn't. So, but I do feel like, I know that one of the things Stacy was upset about was the school board association meeting and things that we voted on. And in that case, I agree with her. We could have put that in.
Sure.
That she could see.
Yeah, those were way ahead.
Right, so I would say if we can, we should on things that are like that the board is looking at. But I would rather have up-to-date information on the budget than be worried about making sure we have everything in.
And I did Kendra asked me to put the budget online today, so that was posted, so anyone either at home or that was
Could be
coming
looking
tonight
at it.
could look at that packet and follow along with us, so. But we did, Amber and Jess had 3 of these meetings this week. So they have been, and yes, we didn't finalize that until last night, and I tried to get it in the drive for you last night and put it on the website today. So sometimes it's just a rough go when you have 5 towns. Those other districts you mentioned do not have 5 towns. So that makes it a little bit harder. Yeah. But we certainly try and we usually have the minutes ahead of time, and we post this anyway.
Correspondence.
Minutes.
Yeah, and things like correspondence, like if someone emails the full board the day before the meeting, I would prefer to include that in our discussion versus waiting a month
Yeah,
until the next
because you missed the
meeting.
deadline, yeah.
So I think we would just have to be prepared that like things might get added as they come in. And we will endeavor to make everything available, but I would just caution that like there will be things that won't be available days and days in advance.
So how does Raymond and Concord do it? It's because they're their own, they don't have a big spread.
Well, I think they not only that, but they must have very strict deadlines because they'll, like Concord, I noticed one time had like 100-page packet posted with their agenda and all their documents ahead of their meeting, but it was a ton of information that they must have set a deadline. Like nothing goes in the board packet or on the agenda unless we have it 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, which we don't typically do that. That's not the way we
only
operate.
meet once a month, so that's kind of crazy.
But they have a lot of community.
Yes,
Right.
that's a lot of the packet, yeah. Different reports and updates and.
The work gets done in committee and then it gets proposed and approved at the board.
So how do people feel? I think, is there a consensus that we would like to move forward with that? Or do people want to sort of say how things are?
I think what we can post ahead of time, we should, with the anything we get early, we'll post, but the need to understand that as much as they're trying to get things out there are some things that are gonna come in last minute.
Yeah, and I will
like
say,
the
like,
budget.
The
Something.
special ed stuff, like this was not in the drive.
I
We
didn't have that
this.
until she handed it out.
And like
Yeah.
Chris often brings things related to the building that we haven't reviewed in advance. And so, I mean, I think it will continue to come up, that, people don't have access to the things that we're looking at. And that's, unfortunately, like, it's not a public document until the board has seen it or theoretically has access to see it. So I would propose that we trial it, see how it works. My best recommendation would be to have a Google Drive similar to the budgets. So like how the budgets are being uploaded now is that there's just a Google Drive with the budgets.
Josh, we can't do that because Josh doesn't give access to our Google Drives to outside emails.
Right.
But what we can do is Ashley just finished today. She's so excited. The website is completely transitioned to Google.
Right.
So I think if she has the public link that is used for the agenda, I don't think it will be as hard now that it's transitioned to Google
Right.
to put the other documents with it.
Yeah, I think that's
So it's like a public link instead of like having a drive and
so
trying
like
to give
how the
access.
policies are now.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
So
So I think it'll be easier now that we're not sharing things we share
SharePoint made things very challenging.
for us as well. Yes.
I would obviously we have to be cautious because there are things that the board sees that are not public information. So we would have to think about, I would honestly think that we would need to think about whether we're going to duplicate efforts. So there will be a public one and also a board one, or if we're just uploading non-public things into the board one, and then the board will also be responsible for looking at the public one, if that makes sense. Instead
I
of
think
putting
it's
things
pretty,
in both.
it's pretty easy to drop it into
Okay.
yours so that you don't have to go too quick.
So we would still access our things the way we are.
Yeah, because we have to put like personnel.
Right.
Someone submits
Correct.
a child rearing letter, that's gonna be a drive that can't go on our website.
Right.
I would also I mean, this is sort of nitty gritty and like organization of a Google Drive, but like I sometimes wonder about, for our Google Drive, the efficiency of doing it by meeting date, just because there are things that span over multiple meetings that then we can't figure out.
Okay, where was
Where
that?
was that in the drive? So instead of doing it in the public by meeting date, having a folder of policies, having a folder of correspondence, having a folder of et cetera for the year. But I don't think that we as a board need to decide that. I'm just, for your staff, I don't know if that's more efficient than doing it by meeting, because it gets confusing.
I think unfortunately, this is going to be, it's gonna have to take a back seat because we're gonna have a new employee that's gonna be trained from
Right.
how to do a board agenda. It's gonna be a little bit of a slow go. If Ashley was gonna stay with us, she could start this like immediately. But
So, okay.
we'll do our best. I'll
you-
know once we hire someone, what the level of training is that they'll need to get the things up and running that they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, if you have it up and running, what you could possibly do this in the future. But if you had the agenda and then it was an item, I'd still like the agendas, going by the agendas. But let's say it's something about a facility contract. It's a link to a folder that has all the facility contract stuff. You know, it might work that way.
Yeah.
But I do like the agendas. I know this is what's going to be talked about, this is what's here, and I can go back to the agenda. But if it's a certain document, then it's linked to it, you'd be able to find it.
Yeah, I just worry about adding a bunch of administrative burden.
No,
we are not
I'm saying
prepared
way in
for.
the future here.
Yeah, yeah,
I
so-
think that's a future thing. You need someone who really.
So
is
as
tech-savvy too.
an update, I think everyone probably got emailed, I don't know. I got emailed that the admin is leaving.
Yes.
I think soon,
Next Friday.
next Friday. Okay. So we're gonna have to be in the process of hiring, well, Patty is, the process of hiring, onboarding. So yes, we can sort of decide that this is what we idealistically want to do. I don't think it will, aside from the budget, I'm hopeful we can still put those in advance.
Well, how about this? I make a motion that we try to put as much as we can ahead of time in the agenda. Things that, you know, aren't last minute. We're trying to do as much as we can. That's what I say.
Starting immediately, or are we
Well, we
starting?
might have to wait a little bit,
As soon
so,
as possible.
but as soon as possible. Yeah, as soon as possible. Like for instance, you know, the Hampshire School Board Association stuff that easily could have been in there.
Sure.
And so things that we can easily put in there, we should, and things that we can, we'll try our best.
Yeah.
But I do not want to get into, I really don't want to get too confusing where it's like, well, I just changed that. It's not the same as what was in a week ago because I have
Right.
more information on the budget. So that's one of the things I'm concerned with.
Oh, for sure. I want to make sure we're all looking at the same things. If that's the entire purpose of doing this, that we're all looking at the same documents. Yeah. Does anyone want a second? Okay. Any other discussion?
I do feel like there's inevitably going to be instances that are going to open up for more critique about or accusations of us hiding things.
Yes.
So it's like another one of these sort of efforts, which is great, and I agree, we're trying to communicate this, but it's gonna, I think, inevitably drive it. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but hopefully it'll go well. I like the idea.
Because our information comes from the SAU. I mean, our agendas, our meeting, our information comes from the SAU. It's not a person
At
here
Deerfield.
in Deerfield, like,
Correct.
and I could be totally wrong and everything, and I haven't checked out. I know the town is starting to do it, but it's the town
one place.
administrator.
Right.
Yeah, there's just,
Yeah.
it's him
Yeah.
that does it, so
One person
It's
for
one
one
per-
department, one
one,
place. Yeah, we
one
have-
person
We
for,
have 8 schools and they're all trying to feed us information to organize it. I mean, we've got it under, we got a pretty good system. And then sometimes Kristen, but you know, she'll do the enrollment update and she'll send it up and here's this for the drive, we plug it in and when we get that stuff, we'll post what we get ahead of time on Facebook.
Okay. So we have a pending motion. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Okay. Well, it won't be
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. Hopefully sooner than later, but we have personnel issues. Okay. D, solar.
So Chris isn't here, so I'm gonna do my best. We received an email from, the people that we're working with for the solar project. And we ran into I would say it's a pretty significant snag. When they were going through the process and either writing the grant or obtaining grant funds, it was brought to the attention of the USDA that Deerfield receives, a REAP grant, which is
Rural educate, you talking about,
rural education, something. We don't receive a ton of money, 20, 30. So our REAP grant, whatever our REAP grant is, we use it for the mentor program, right? So when we use the mentors.
and CFG,
Yeah.
and a few other things, but for the most part.
So because we get that funding, there was something in fine print that nobody knew about, that, oh my goodness, you receive a REAP grant, so we're not sure that you're now eligible for this. So it's a pretty significant, we've got to figure this out and figure it out quickly. So we passed it on to our attorney. The solution that the solar company came up with it was an idea, was forming an LLC. And our attorney said, I don't think a school can form an LLC. I don't think you can't do a workaround this. So we're gonna have to figure out if there is a way to get around it, or whether it's like prorating the money because we get some grant funding already through REAP or not. We do not know. This is brand new and it's definitely an unforeseen snag. So we're working on it. I talked to Dean again yesterday, and I'm trying to, ask him, the person that he works with in his firm that's more of a specialist in this area, to try and see if there's a way to make this happen. And Dean thought, well, maybe we could work with the town and they might be able to do something. And I said, but the warrant article is on the schools. So that would then, I think, we have another warrant article in March, and I don't know what the time frame is on the grants and how long the government's gonna wait for us. So we are on it, but it's.
How long the grants are gonna be there?
Yeah, I don't know I asked what the deadline was, and he said, well, I just need to keep reporting back to USDA that we're trying to figure this out. We haven't said get it done by this date or else, but
So
it needs to be dealt with.
This would impact us because how it's working is that the person installing the solar applies for all these grants
On
our behalf, and so he's essentially paying for, but also getting reimbursed for the cost of the solar, so that we're not paying anything for it. And this would impact his ability to get paid for the solar.
He wouldn't be able to do the project.
Or you would not be able to do a power purchase agreement.
And he did offer to come and speak to you, but I'm not sure what stage that
Yeah,
we're at,
I
and
think we
that's
need to
not
hear
gonna
from the
accomplish
lawyer.
anything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Well, all right.
posted, but it's
a bummer.
a significant enough snag that you need to know.
So potentially, we had this, I think, on the docket for next summer, which definitely could be impacted by all of this. Okay. All right. Thank you for the update.
Sorry,
Yeah.
not a good one.
But this is not an agenda item, just a shout out. Speaking of warrant articles, people need to start thinking about warrant articles, because we will have to start discussing those soon. So,
And Chris sat with our administrative team last Friday when we met, and we went through the 24 to 2032 projection and different projects that we have on a spreadsheet. So that's the kind of stuff that the board will need to decide, the countertops are 20,000, we're gonna budget for that, or we're gonna put it on a warrant article, or we're gonna use a trust fund, those kinds of things, so.
and if there's other creative things people want to come up with for warrant articles, you are welcome to present them. But it needs to be within the next month. Yeah.
The
So
next couple of meetings.
start thinking.
We'll share everything from Chris, and then you'll have to. Because we'll need to put a warrant article forward if we're gonna. Yes.
Okay. Board reports, PTO update. I don't see PTO here.
I'll have that, a few things that they
Oh,
did. on my thing.
perfect.
Mhm.
I am gonna add MBC to the bottom here, just because I have something to say about the MBC. But executive board,
Because, I mean, we did the budget, the SAU budget was passed.
the SAU budget was passed and it is posted on the SAU website, I believe also on the town website. If people want to look at it, the meetings where it was approved were not recorded. So if you have questions, your best bet is to reach out to one of us and we can.
There are minutes and then the budget's posted. The budget format is very similar to the
Yes.
school, so, but yes, and I'm also happy to answer questions.
But the funds are very confusing if you've never looked at
Special
it.
ed funds,
Yeah,
yes.
there's multiple funds. So if there are questions about the SAU budget, please let us know. I have not gotten any requests about that, but we'll be happy to discuss with anyone. Okay, principals report.
Yes, we'll cover October 3rd, our last October meeting, well, the first meeting, to November 6th today. So on Friday, October 4th was advisory day. For those that, I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with advisory day, especially if you've worked here or had children here. But that's a day where our advisories and our magnets take the day to go off on a field trip somewhere. It's a lot of community building. We try to do them 2 or 3 times a year, at least twice. Once in the fall, as we're just getting started, and once again in the springtime. Our 6th graders went to Beach Hill Farm, our 7th graders went to Butternut Farm, and our 8th graders went to Hampton Beach. Friday night, that same Friday night, our Deerfield Community School Band participated in the Concord High School Band Jump Up Night, which has been a tradition here for many years. On Wednesday, October 9th, was Fire Prevention Week that week, and our kindergartners had a visit from Assistant Chief Dubiansky and a Deerfield Fire Department fire truck, so it was very exciting. Thursday, October 10th, we had an author visit from Jarrett Krosoczka, Krosoczka, Krosoczka. He was wonderful. We did the assembly in the gym because he met with all of our students K to 8. Often, a lot of times our authors focus on like K to 3 or 4 to 8. And he had a message for all the kids. So the best story that he told was the number of times that his books were rejected. And, and he'd say, and so I sent it back again. And did I get it then? And the kids were like, yes. And he's like, no. So it was just cool to see. And he's written the books, the Lunch Lady books, and they're so super popular. So that money is raised through the readathon that Mrs. Moschew and Mrs. Moore over there help with every year. And it raises a couple $1,000s, and we're able to bring in some very, very good authors for our visits, and our kids love them. Friday, October 11th was a professional day here. We started the day doing a protocol around the climate and culture survey results that were done, the climate culture survey done last spring. And we're doing some work around that. Main focus of the day, though, that day was work around Simplify Writing, which is a new writing program that we're implementing K to 8. Which you'll hear more about when we invite our literacy folks. And there was also Eureka Math Squared. Our Eureka Math Squared is just K to 2, so sprinkled in there was science teachers got to meet, middle school science, middle school math teachers got to meet. Simplify Writing really covered K to 8 because we're doing a lot of work with writing across the curriculum. So Andrea was able to meet with our science and math teachers as well to talk about writing in their classrooms. The afternoon focused Eureka School Math Squared for our K to 5, and then our middle school revisited recommendations from the 2018 NELMS report that was done. So if you've been on the board for a while, then you will be very familiar with that. The NELMS report is available on our website. There's a link to that if anybody is interested in reading that. We have, we basically gave the middle school team, we met as a middle school team. Brian broke everybody up into different groups. And the groups were really well done in terms of like a seasoned teacher with a newer teacher, with an IA teacher, with a So they got a little perspective from everybody, and we went through the recommendations that NELMS had made back in 2018 and the things that we've been working on through the years. And we're able to report out whether this is something we've accomplished or this is something that we're still working on or we should revisit this, that type of thing. So we'll be doing some further follow-up work on that. We definitely celebrated our achievements and identified some key areas for continued growth and action in the middle school. Our preschool team that day worked on a report card for their preschoolers, which is very exciting. So they spent the day doing some webinar work and working out. They came up with a wonderful product, and I'm happy to share that with the board. And we ended the day with an AI and education module. Mrs. Petroselli sat in her closet back there and did a Canva video, bringing some people through some of the important vocabulary that they'll need to know about as we work through the AI for our teachers and our students. We have got a subscription to Magic School AI. So that was the big reveal on that particular Friday was watch this module and now go ahead and play around in this Magic School AI. And so we ended the day doing that and giving the teachers some team time. And we also built in some planning time for the Simplify Writing and Eureka Math Squared, because taking on these 2 new programs this year has really been a lot in terms of having to plan and prepare. And so we tried to build that in as well. October 16th was an SAU Leadership Day, and on Thursday, October 17th, our first graders went to Swan Lake, and our fourth graders took a trip to Strawberry Bank. On Monday, October 21st, we had a CRB meeting. I don't think we have CRB.
We
now.
do.
Okay, that's next. I won't report out on that. I'll let you do that, Ellen.
I don't have much to say about it. It's something really important you want to say.
I mean, I'll hear what you have to say. On October 22nd, our volleyball team was in the playoffs. They won that game and went on to the finals. They were an undefeated. They went on to the finals with an undefeated season and unfortunately lost in the finals. Our girls handled it like champs, though, and it was really exciting for the other team to win, knowing that they were playing an undefeated team. So.
I heard that last year with my granddaughter when Deerfield came and beat them, and they had been undefeated.
There you go.
I've been there.
Oh, that's so funny. I'll have to remind them of that. But they certainly played hard. They had a wonderful season, and we're very, very proud of our Dragons. On Wednesday, October 23rd, our teachers participated in CPR. We do that every other year on the even years. And so then on Thursday, they participated in the first aid. So we try to do that back to back. On Thursday, October 24th, our 8th graders toured Concord High School and Pembroke Academy. They had lunch at Pembroke Academy as well. And I think I mentioned last time, Co-Brown does tours a little differently. And any parent, any family and student that's interested, they have submitted some paperwork and have gotten a date to come and tour Co-Brown. So that is happening for our students as well. Friday, October 25th was the first ever fun run. Mr. Grieve had so much fun.
Almost fun.
Our 8th graders did a lot of work to get this, the fun run. And we had quite a few parents who volunteered, and it ended up being a great day. It was just the morning from 8:30 to 10:30-ish.
Roughly.
Craig from Parks and Rec was over here. He was the DJ. We had a bunch of kids running around in inflatable, costumes. We had an axolotl and
Couple
just
dragons.
cheering on the kids that went up, and every grade level got to go up and do a run around the soccer field for about 15 minutes, and it raised about $8,000, a little more than $8,000. So the idea behind it was that every grade level, they got to keep half of whatever money they raised, and then the other half went directly into the 8th grade fund to pay for the New York City trip. As you know, this is a big class of 60 students, so it's going to cost. We're going to need 2 buses, which we have not needed in a couple of years.
Very long time.
A very long time. So that will definitely help raise some money for our New York City trip. Also on Friday, we had our first middle school dance and competed with Parks and Rec, who also had their Halloween dance going on. But that's okay.
It worked out.
It worked out just fine. Live It Green and Kindness Magnets. So usually just one magnet will do a dance. And this year we're doing things a little differently. And 2 magnets are teaming up and hosting a dance. I think we're going to have 3 or 4 dances through the course of the year. And the kids always have a great time. On Monday, October 28th, Our PTO provided an apple bar. Every month they try to give a little treat to the teachers, and that for the month of October they did an apple bar. So thank you to all the families that contributed to that, as well as our PTO, who comes and sets it up and breaks it down and cleans it up, and we don't have to worry about a thing. Tuesday, October 29th, our third graders took a field trip to Great Bay. Also on Tuesday, our girls soccer team made it to the playoffs. They played Nottingham. They won, and then they went on to play Three Rivers in Pembroke on that Friday, and did not come away with a win, but certainly we were very proud of them for making it to the championship game. Wednesday, October 30th, the Sunshine Committee hosted a staff breakfast. That's always a nice way to start your morning. Monday, November 4th, we started the book fair. This particular book fair is run by 5th grade, and the money that they collect is used to offset the cost for their Boston field trip. For many years, they would sleep over at the Museum of Science. Then when COVID hit, that stopped, and I think now they take the train in to Boston, they spend the whole day, and they take the train back, and then there's a bus to bring them back to Deerfield. So they're not back. I think they come back at like 7:00 at night or something like that. So it's a full day, and so this money from the book fair will offset the cost for that trip. And last but not least, on Tuesday, just yesterday, we had our parent-teacher conferences. We had several families participate. In our middle school, we do student-led conferences, so that was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. A thank you to all the families who participated, and another big thank you to our PTO, who provided the most delicious spread for our teachers to get us through the day. Lots of baked goods and treats for the staff was set up in the cafeteria. So in between conferences, they would run, take a bathroom break. We all know what that's like. Run and get a snack, and then back to their conferences. And also last, really but not least, basketball season is underway. We did a couple days of tryouts,
Yes.
and A teams and B teams have been chosen
Correct.
for girls and boys. So it will be a fun season. Basketball is a long season. So
Did we hear about cross country? We had a victory in cross country, right?
we did. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I went through because a lot that happened on Saturdays, so I don't pay attention on Saturdays, my day of rest. So, but yes, we did. We had first place. Our boys came in first place.
Boys came in first for tier 4.
Yeah.
And girls came in third. If I remember that correctly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was excellent.
All the kids improved their times. They all
Yeah.
had best improved their own personal
Mhm.
times.
Yep, and we had runners who can compete in like a subcategory, and we had a very large turnout for that too. So that's just more of an experience piece, and the kids really love it.
Yeah.
So
God bless you. Thank you for not forgetting them. Appreciate
I
that.
remember.
Mhm.
I saw a post, I think about it.
Hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything for curriculum review board?
Well, we met on the 21st, and we talked about the curriculum review cycle, so literacy is gonna be up for renewal this year, so that's what we'll need to have a presentation.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Or
then
we should do it at the same time.
I thought about that. I did consider it. I think I'll probably ask them to come in January, since they'll be back in probably late April, beginning of May.
if they're ready, I mean, they talked about some of the things that they're working on.
Yeah.
So,
As you know, we have 2 new readings, but one new last year and one new this year. So they're trying to get it done. So we'll let you know if they need an extension, but I think that they're going to be able to get it done. I really do.
Yeah.
They've got a
so
good
it
part.
sounded like they were doing it. And I
Mhm.
mean, one of the things that stuck out to me was just to mention that their instructional practices are research-based.
Mm.
So they're trying to do the science of reading. So that's where a lot of that. Math is just in a mid-year cycle. So we talked a little bit about Eureka the Square in the middle school, looking at what they're doing, scope and sequence. Science, there was a problem with the enrollment with the curriculum committee. There aren't many people. There's like 3 people to show up. So we talked about increasing that.
I did
Social
look. There are more, but
studies, yeah, they're just not
they
coming
just
to the
felt
meetings.
like it was, yeah.
Social studies has really just been looking at just to make sure they're hitting all these different grade levels. And then, I mean, that's pretty much, they went through everything, tech, music, wellness, library, guidance. In preschool, we talked about the new report card. And that's pretty much it. Review of the AI policy.
Hmm.
Right? So
Mhm.
looking at that and, things that you already mentioned about the Magic School AI. So, yeah, cool.
Anything on electric bus committee?
No, I mean, as far as I know, it's dead.
They're
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
I think the last we
Yeah,
talked about it,
come on.
you were maybe gonna go to one more meeting?
No, because I don't think anybody even reached the one
Okay.
who was in charge of it, and so.
All right, electric bus committee. Fun.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna add the NBC here. So the NBC meets every Tuesday, with the exception of yesterday, for the election. We are working on the town budget right now. We anticipate the NBC will receive the school budget after our December 4th. Is that right? Sounds right in my head, but I don't remember. Our first Wednesday in December, we will finalize our budget here, and then it will go to the NBC. So December is full of fun school NBC meetings on Tuesdays, and I would encourage all the board members to come. If you've never experienced the NBC, it's a really enlightening process.
Yeah, I have to say, I went to almost all of them last year, and they were really good to go to.
Yeah.
They gave you a good idea of what
There's a
was
lot of discussions. There's a lot that can happen at the NBC with our budget. So I think it's important for people to go and be part of the discussion.
And we need to remember that I would try and get as much budget work as you can done at the next meeting, because if you make a lot of changes on the 4th, on a Wednesday, the NBC is expecting their budget and their budget binders on Tuesday, and that will be impossible if we have to make a bunch of changes here. So hopefully we'll have most everything ironed out before that meeting on the 4th.
So if you have a lot of big ideas, bring them to our next meeting. Because we'll need to,
Because once we hand it to the NBC, it's theirs.
yeah, we can't make changes once it goes to the NBC. So we can't decide mid-December, oh, actually, we should decrease this line, or you could go to the NBC and suggest that. But it's no longer our budget once we give it over to the NBC. And the NBC also votes on our money warrant articles. So if we say that we are requesting $150,000 for special ed, the NBC votes whether or not they recommend it. So they will also want to see our warrant articles, which is why we should get those drafted sooner than later. So those go to the NBC. That is it for that. I don't have any other informational items.
I have one. In your meeting minutes on October 16th, I wasn't up there. On the space needs, you were talking about the space committee meeting direction,
Yes.
and were we going to discuss any more of that at any time? Or?
Not tonight. It's not on the agenda, so I wouldn't recommend having a big discussion about that. But yes, I think we should add that to our next
To be on a work session.
work session, which is our next meeting. So we'll talk about it after the budget next day, about where we want to go. All right, we are back to public comments.
And this isn't being dramatic, I just can't waste it. The last step. This is not a fully baked idea, but it's something that I picked up on in, on my project, that I don't know the accountant lady's there.
Amber.
Her information, but she had mentioned that you were using some, I believe she called it unassigned balance for your food, like to help balance out food. I also assume, and I'm not sure, keep in mind, I don't understand everything that goes on, but I know at the end of the year, sometimes there's some extra money that you haven't spent. I guess it's considered an unassigned balance, but that might not be the right same term. And then you decide whether or not to give it back to taxpayers, or money can then be put into, you can choose to have warrant articles that says, we're going to take some of that money and put it somewhere. I am wondering if you need to create an account for your food, that if, you know, it's gonna help the whole purpose of those. We've been discussing this a lot in our town, right? And at the NBC, for that matter, that part of the reason you have these trust funds is supposed to be smoothing everything out. So that you don't have to, every budget doesn't have to over budget in case of what happens if the sky falls. You know, so you have, it's got to smooth things out. So I just, I'm throwing out there maybe, you know, because food, I don't know, food insecurity is still kind of like very front and center in my mind in general. So, you know, the less we have to, even if it's 10 cents, you know, the less we have to raise. And even that's not even barely covering it. You know, what would happen? I don't know what would happen if she just said you have to have it equal and you can only raise it 10 cents. I really don't know. But just an idea for a possible warrant article. You know, nobody likes money warrant articles, but and I don't know if that even works. But good for thought.
Thank you.
Popped into my head and I didn't want to speak sooner. Oh, and I did want, I guess NEC I wanted to mention too, I know with the town, we would accept budget and have the warrant articles.
Yes.
If that pushes, you know, for some reason, you're really bumping up against it, I think that you have a little bit of wiggle room. And then I'll look back to my.
Great, thank you. Other public comments? Okay. We don't need a non-public, okay? No appointments, resignations, all right, I'm gonna make, oh, stole it from me.
He's always fast.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
I did.
Nate and Kendra.